It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and John Daigle.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eating Podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eating Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings. It's the show that's so nice. We do it twice every week. We try to give these to you in, 25 to 27, 28-minute digestible episodes for the average workout time, the average commute time, whatever it may be for you. So we do half the games in episode 1, half the games in episode 2. And by we, I primarily mean he, right? John Daigle from EstablishTheRun.com, where, by the way, incredible website, an absolute treasure trove of information. Just make sure you use the code FEAST when you sign up to get all that intel so that you get the discount. Follow John on social at NotJDaigle. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. Means a great deal. Those of you that rate and review the show, please, please, please rate and review the show. In fact, if you rate and review the show, send to me a screenshot, Ross at RossTucker.com. I'll let you ask John a specific question on the show if you rate and review it. Again, Ross at RossTucker.com. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL on social. We are at Ross Tucker Pod if you want to engage in any way. Good stuff on yesterday's episode about the Jets defense without Salah, about the Browns without Denzel Ward, Tua against McDermott. I took a bunch of notes. I'm ready, John, for the Patriots and the Titans.
We saw the Titans in their first game without DeAndre Hopkins finally feed Calvin Ridley. Over 100 receiving yards in the first half alone, and at the end of the day, a team-high 39% target share. And although the Patriots are still considered a defense you're supposed to respect, in their last 3 games, they continue giving it up to wide receiver ones. So Stephon Diggs had 6 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown. Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jaguars, 5 catches, 89 yards and a score. And then just last week, Garrett Wilson in that one, 5 catches for 113 yards. So as long as Hopkins is still with another team, I think Ridley is finally a player we can trust in fantasy football, going right back to him in this game. On the other side of the ball for New England, we've seen a month with Jacoby Brissett in the past out the gates, and it didn't go well for many of their wide receivers. Hunter Henry still got there, led the team with 19 targets in those first 4 weeks. But really what I think they become, assuming Drake May does not start and stays in concussion protocol, is a team led by Ramondre Stevenson. And we've seen a signal that whenever they are in games they can compete with or they have a lead, that's who they lean on. Even in weeks 1 and 2, everyone remembers Ramondre Stevenson being an RB1 with 28 and 23 touches. And then last week in that upset against the Jets, 23 touches again, just 5 for Antonio Gibson behind him. This is a game where I think the Patriots can compete and win. So I do like Ramondre Stevenson to get back in the mix as an RB1 in this spot.
Love it. Just for clarity on the Titans, right now, as we're recording this Wednesday, we really don't know who the quarterback will be again, right?
We don't. And Mason Rudolph, unfortunately, they put him under center to not make the same mistakes as Will Levis, who's going through that shoulder injury. But his 2 interceptions and fumble, they were the same mistakes that Will Levis had been making. So I think unfortunately head coach Brian Callahan is just in a lose-lose spot right now. I would imagine he still throws Will Levis out there because you still have evaluating to do over the second half of the season before next year's draft.
I totally agree and think that would be the right decision. Let's talk Bears and Cardinals. How about Harrison Jr. and McBride, especially in the second half there against the Dolphins last week, John?
And there was a reason for that. They finally did not send Marvin Harrison Jr. solely on go routes. Even if you look at his route chart that NFL.com usually provides for every player, lots more crossing and intermediate shallow routes, which then allows Harrison to run himself open in man coverage and then get upfield as well. He's not being asked solely to create contested catches for himself and battle downfield on coin flip throws. So just in changing his usage, that certainly helped everything. And I would hope that offensive coordinator Drew Petzing views it as such the rest of the way, because that's how we're going to get Harrison Jr. there as a top 12 wide receiver weekly and someone that we drafted in the second round. But also, as you said, great to see Trey McBride also get there in a game that Marvin Harrison Jr. was successful, since we did have questions that maybe McBride was stealing everything from MHJ previously. McBride was out there for every drop back except one of them, and every down tight end we should continue having the utmost confidence in, even in this tougher spot against the Bears. And this being a tougher spot for the Cardinals, though, and one we're still starting Kyler Murray for the rushing floor he provides the last 3 games especially, it's a different spot for Caleb Williams. Because last week, I should have called him out on the show. This is my mistake. Caleb Williams this year, the real key has been you just have to keep him upright. Like a lot of professional quarterbacks. You just make sure they're not under pressure, and he's been just fine. 71% completion rate from a clean pocket this year. But in that game, we saw the signal that Dan Quinn had been creating chaos at a much more frequent rate. So Caleb Williams being under pressure should not have been surprising. And then, of course, this year under duress, he's completed only 39% of his passes. But that's not the Commanders in this game. This is the Cardinals, who struggle to generate pressure at all. 5th worst pressure rate in the entire league. So I do think this is a much easier spot for Caleb Williams and the Bears passing game to finally look as they did in their 3 performances before their bye. We've also seen them lean on DeAndre Swift now too. 18 to 20 backfield touches this past week. And although he continues getting the goal line carries siphoned by Roschon Johnson, who has been punching them in, all 4 of Roschon's touchdowns this year are from 1 yard out. Swift is still someone that clearly the coaching staff wants to involve in every touch back, and someone I keep on going back to as a low-end RB1.
Got it. All right. What about the Jaguars and the Eagles? Jags, we don't really know. We know Christian Kirk is out with the fractured collarbone. We know they traded their left tackle, Cam Robinson, although I don't know that he's that much better than Walker Little anyway. I don't think the Jags think he is, which is why they think they made the trade. But we don't know. I think I saw somewhere, it might have been Pro Football Doc, SportsInjuryCentral.com, 6 score, that said they thought Brian Thomas would be out 2 or 3 weeks. The Jags are saying it's a chest contusion and he's day-to-day. So that's a big difference there. Again, I thought I saw it on my timeline. I'd have to go back and check and see where SportsInjuryCentral.com is with Brian Thomas. But obviously, he's been fantastic. The question is, do we expect him to be out there?
And Gabe Davis dealing with a shoulder injury behind the scenes. So the Jags may be short their 3 starting wide receivers. We have seen this before going back to last year. Evan Ingram did not have a single end zone target or receiving touchdown until Christian Kirk was injured in week 13 last year. And then only over the last month and a half of the season, that's when Evan Ingram scored all of his touchdowns. Also, go back to last week in the 4th quarter, Evan Ingram did not have a receiving touchdown again this year until Christian Kirk got injured, and only then did Ingram score, bullying 3 guys around him and jumping up for it. So we've seen that when Christian Kirk is not available, Trevor Lawrence leans on Evan Ingram. I think Evan Ingram could be a top 4, top 3 tight end this week and the rest of the way just because of what we've seen in the past and how they use him when Kirk is not available. So someone I'm looking forward to starting in every format in fantasy moving forward. And I think the person stepping up, at least in the short term for Kirk, until we get Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis back, is their rookie from last year, Parker Washington. Washington only really came off the bench for 2 starts last year in games that the Jaguars did not have Kirk or Jamal Agnew, who was their wide receiver 2 last season. But in those games, scored 2 touchdowns, led the team in end zone targets, similar to how the Rams used Demarcus Robinson, or the Chiefs will probably use DeAndre Hopkins, just trying to get another body in there who's really good inside the 10-yard line. That's how Parker Washington has operated, came off the bench and led the Jaguars in routes run just last week. So Parker Washington is the deeper guy to note for fantasy. I think he operates as the team's wide receiver 1 this game. And that's important because they will probably need the passing game to do well. The Jaguars will, because the Eagles, despite their coaching mistakes we see weekly, Jalen Hurts has been unstoppable. In 3 games out of the bye, Hurts has completed 71% of his passes for 10.5 yards per attempt, 9 touchdowns from scrimmage, and no turnovers. It's become a condensed target tree even the last couple of games without Dallas Goedert. With A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith not only mirroring each other in targets this past game, we saw Devonta Smith get involved downfield, that toe-tapping touchdown in the back of the end zone. That's where Jalen Hurts goes to frequently, with Saquon Barkley still getting every touch in the backfield. So for the Eagles for fantasy, it's really simple. Not only are they playing amazing right now, but also it's condensed between 4 players, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen the status of Goddard potentially for this week. I wonder if they'll, try to give that hammy a little bit more time. What do you mean? What are you referencing in particular in terms of coaching mistakes for the Eagles, John?
We've just seen some decision making I think is questionable from Nick Sirianni, and there's been some tussles on the sideline, just some odd choices, honestly.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had seen something specific to
not specific
offensive play calling or something recently.
Third and fourth down decision making, things like that.
Got it. All right, let's get to maybe the best matchup of the weekend, the Lions and the Packers. Although here we are recording this Wednesday morning, posting it Thursday, and we have another injury situation with a quarterback. This one, it's Jordan Love with the Packers as they host the Lions.
And it's the biggest one, the one we need to know, because we saw how the Packers passing game fared in 2 starts earlier this year with Malik Willis under center. Matt LaFleur is such a brilliant play caller that they got by with 2 wins. And in those 2 games for fantasy, Malik Willis was the QB 17 and the QB 6, averaging 6 carries at 8.5 rushing points. But the passing game faltered. Even Jaden Reed in those 2 contests totaled 50 receiving yards and 6 catches. Romeo Doubs led the pass catchers with 80 yards, so 40 receiving yards per game. It just didn't go well at all. And so if Malik Willis is out there, although the Lions have really struggled to contain opposing wide receiver 1s in particular, that wasn't just a Calvin Ridley stat. That goes back to the weeks prior against Detroit too. Then I do think that all of the Packers wide receivers are fringe flex options because we just can't get there with Malik Willis as a quarterback, unfortunately. If it's Jordan Love, though, much more confidence in Jaden Reed and Dobbs and Christian Watson. Christian Watson previously, just a note for everyone in case we get Love under center, had been rotating routes with Dontavian Wicks. But last week out of nowhere, Watson popped up for a season-high 80% route rate as the team's wide receiver 3. So something to keep in mind if Love is under center. On the other side of the ball, the Lions are just an engine that can't be stopped. Even with Jared Goff throwing for roughly 50 passing yards last week, and they still top 40 points. Ben Johnson, every commentator, when they announce Lions games, they see Ben Johnson's plays inside the red zone, and they say, oh, he's emptying out his bag. I'm not sure the bag is not bottomless for Ben Johnson. I don't think he has a number of plays that he's hidden from us just yet. We've seen offensive line screens. We've seen orbit routes, even for Khalif Raymond, the team's wide receiver 4 last week, to get him in motion and get him a touchdown inside the 10-yard line. And so, although the wealth has been spread out for the Lions, Detroit, Jared Goff in particular, playing out of his mind, we did see in the first of what we expect to be 2 games without Jamison Williams, we saw Sam Laporta finally return back to our lives for fantasy. Through week 7, Sam Laporta had only seen 10% of Detroit's targets. In the first game without Jamison Williams last week, 33% target share, including that throw from David Montgomery, because again, Ben Johnson's bag is bottomless. So love getting Sam Laporta back into our lives in this game. Just continue starting all of your Lions players.
It's super impressive and super fun, obviously, as we all know, to watch them. And I mean, the special teams, they've been taking it away from the offense in that last game. All right, let's get to the Rams and the Seahawks. A week ago, we were talking about Cooper Kupp maybe being on the trade market, and we were curious about the fact that he might be coming back on a Thursday night game when he had 10 more days to heal after it. Well, it wasn't just him. It was Puka Nacua. That had to really be an issue for people. Thursday Night Football, Puka all of a sudden, he's playing in the game. Now we know they're both playing at Seattle, John.
And it's an entirely different view of the Rams offense. A season best 5.8 yards per play with both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp available. And in their last 8 games going back to last year, including the wild card loss against Detroit, that's when, in Week 12, Demarcus Robinson supplanted Tutu Atwell in 3 wide receiver sets for Los Angeles. And in that time, the Rams have averaged 6.2 yards per play, third in 2023, and that would be the 5th best offense this year. Not only that, but remember, not apples to apples, I know, but I always like to point out whenever offensive-minded head coach has seen a defensive-minded coach in the past. And last year, Baltimore's defense put up historical numbers, historically great on that side of the ball. And yet Sean McVay and Stafford in that game against Baltimore and Mike McDonald scored 31 points and 3 passing scores. Stafford fell just short of 300 yards, didn't get the ball back in overtime because the Ravens marched down the field and just won the game before giving it back. So I do think McVay and the offense can have a lot of success in this one with everyone at full health. It's also the fact that the Seahawks, even going back to last week with James Cook going over for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, they are unable to stop the run and still struggling to find a way how to do so. So Kyren Williams, not only does he score a touchdown in literally every game this year, but Kyren Williams is once again in a spot where he should be viewed as the overall RB1 for fantasy. I love everything about the Rams offense in this game, even for Demarcus Robinson, 2 touchdowns, but again, 3 wide receiver sets, and they use him inside the red zone, similar to how Sean McVay used Odell Beckham inside the red zone during the team's Super Bowl run. For the Seahawks, we talk about players we're waiting on. We don't know DK Metcalf's knee status just yet. I assume he's going to play. The team sounds optimistic, and we really need him in this game because our worst fears came true, and just the entire infrastructure of Seattle's passing offense collapsing without Metcalf against the Bills. The Rams don't field the same nightmarish defense as Buffalo does, but it's still a game where we need Metcalf if possible. Geno Smith now, just in the last 2 weeks, 28 and 29 pass attempts due to blowout scenarios. But if we get Metcalf, just look at the last 5 games prior to these last 2 weeks. 45 pass attempts per game for a 68% completion rate. I think both offenses can pop here if we get DK back in for Seattle. I know there was also some concerns about Kenneth Walker in what should have been an amazing spot. He was almost my value pick of the week. Thankfully, he was not because that offense failed altogether. But don't worry, Zach Charbonnet solely involved in the 4th quarter due to a blowout. Kenneth Walker still handling every touch to that point. Get him back in your fantasy lineups.
Let's move on to Sunday night because there is a lot to talk about. It's the Colts and the Vikings. We mentioned earlier that the Vikings did make the trade for Cam Robinson as their left tackle, but at least we know at this point exactly what the situation is at quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. It's Joe Flacco again, John. They're going back to Joe Flacco after Anthony Richardson has struggled, and he also took himself out of the game on Sunday.
I would like to hear from your perspective, quick thoughts on Anthony Richardson. I know you've said it on a past episode, but I'd like to hear what's the idea from a locker room, not just my analysis perspective.
Yeah, so 2 different things, right? Strictly from the decision for Steichen, imagine standing in front of a room of 100 guys plus, coaches, players, whatever, all looking at you, and they know who gives them the best chance to win. You know who gives you the best chance to win, and they know that you know who gives them the best chance to win. Asking those guys to lay it out there on the line and take physical risk, wear and tear to their body without allowing them to have the reward, or at least the best chance of the reward, That's a tough thing for any guy to do, to stand in front of a room like that and not give that room the best chance they have at the reward that is a victory in pro football. So I think he's doing the right thing, because I think if Flacco plays great, they make the playoffs, awesome. If Flacco plays bad, put Richardson back in. You know, if Flacco plays okay and they're out of it in a few weeks, then okay, put Richardson back in. I think he's doing the right thing. As far as Richardson's concerned, man, just I am perplexed that his conditioning isn't good enough that he can stay in the game after a play like that. Has he ever seen like Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray play football? They do that half the plays in a game. And then the fact that he actually did it is crazy. Maybe the worst thing is after the game, he didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He's like, yeah, I just needed to come out for a play. Like, I am surprised that he didn't realize how bad of a look that would be.
I'm perplexed no one taught him how to lie better, because at least you got to say something else, man. You can't show up and say I'm tired while, as you said, the rest of like your brothers, the Warriors, are out there competing in a division game. You're inside the red zone and you check yourself out because you're tired. It's just the worst look possible. And I do know from like an NFL analyst perspective, I've seen opinions from both sides that yes, as from a team building perspective, you are trying to evaluate and develop Anthony Richardson. But it's as you said, these are grown-ass men trying to feed their families. We don't have time for that. We're not playing the game for the development of one person. We're all in this together trying to win football games. So I think they should have benched him. I think it's the right call to get Flacco in. Having said that, let's step back and get back to the fantasy portion of this. I'm a little worried about this game because in terms of like under pressure and against the blitz, which we know Brian Flores always does, we talk about it weekly, which, by the way, Flores gave Matthew Stafford the utmost respect on Thursday. He blitzed at a season-low rate. Still Stafford under pressure a few times, but Stafford was just amazing in that game. But Joe Flacco's 4.5 yards per attempt against the blitz this year, only better than Deshaun Watson this season. He's struggled, and so I'm a little worried about this game for the Colts passing attack. Having said that, we have seen that when Flacco's under center, Josh Downs is the winner. A team-high 26.5% target share and 19 fantasy points per game for Josh Downs whenever Flacco's starting. So no questions asked. Get Josh Downs back in your lineup immediately. On Thursday as well, we saw what is a changing of the guard. The Vikings did trade for Cam Akers, but honestly, Aaron Jones has played so well this season that they've just stopped giving the ball to anyone. Aaron Jones literally 100% of the team's backfield touches in that game, and now we get the Colts front seven that we continue trying to attack weekly. As we mentioned, Joe Mixon last week, even over 100 yards and a touchdown. So Aaron Jones, the utmost confidence in this game. And then we'll see about the Vikings and Sam Darnold, since T.J. Hawkinson could also return. And if so, while I'm a little bit skeptical of his workload, they have had the extended 10 days rest. They said they could have started Hawkinson last week, but I think he gets in there in this game, and I would treat him as a fringe tight end one.
Let's talk about my friends from Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka and an official vodka partner of the NFL. I love this. Smirnoff is giving fans in select areas of the country, like maybe where you live, a chance to win the ultimate game day experience, from tickets to sideline passes and much more. All you have to do is go to gamedays.com until November 15th to enter for your chance to win. Smirnoff, we do game days. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age. No purchase necessary, 21 plus, ends 11/15/24. See rules at website for participating area and other important details. Sponsored by Diageo Americas Incorporated, New York, New York. We do gamedays.com. All right, let's talk Bucks and Chiefs Monday night, John.
It's been a mess for the Bucs backfield the last 2 weeks. Bucky Irvin, 28 touches, Rachaad White, 27, Sean Tucker, 9. They're continuing to run a committee, although it's Irving and Rachaad White who we should continue starting, White especially for his pass-catching prowess. We also are juggling wide receivers right now for the Bucs because the 3-wide set began Trey Palmer, Jalen McMillan, and Sterling Shepard, and then even Sterling Shepard suffered a hamstring injury last week. Over the last 3 quarters, rookie Jalen McMillan led the team in targets, tied Cade Otton with 7 targets each. And when you watch the film, Baker Mayfield actually sailed the throw, missed McMillan for a 50-yard would-be touchdown completely. So I still have confidence in McMillan as a flex option in this game, especially if Sterling Shepard's out. On the other side of the ball, I'm expecting DeAndre Hopkins to have the snaps upticked a hair and be used as a big-bodied threat inside the red zone. But really what I'm looking for is that there's still a chance here first-round rookie Xavier Worthy can outperform DeAndre Hopkins in fantasy. Worthy didn't see 18% of Kansas City's targets in any game before their bye, but now in their last 2 starts out of the bye, 32% and 23% target shares. Even getting in the end zone last week for a receiving score also got a carry. So Xavier Worthy is someone I continue to have a lot of confidence in, and it's a bold pick, but I still think he outscores DeAndre Hopkins in fantasy this week.
Ooh, love it. Should be an absolutely fantastic game. Baker Mayfield, we'll see what he's got without some of his guys still. Check out John on social, at @NotJDaigle. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod, and we're stuffed. It's over.
Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Feast. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.